What is going on, people? I hope that y'all doing well in your mind, body, and spirit. I just finished burning a whole lot of incense up here. It's called, this one was called Black Love. Actually, I have Black Love, and then I got one that's centered on clarification. And so I'm feeling real clarified because this morning, you know, the world is a nutty place, and I know that at times it's hot down south for some of y'all who are down south. Y'all hear me? It's just too hot. The kids are out of school at this juncture for y'all, and I think that you have to do the work to make sure you preserve your peace and radically lean into your joy. And so I am excited. I got a brother friend here who is amazing. I am so excited that you'll get an opportunity to really hear some of his journey. And let me tell you a little bit more about it. So if you've ever been in international education or you have thought about it, you might not have actually heard of Kevin Simpson, but I'm about to fix that for y'all. Kevin isn't just an educator, he is a disruptor, a door opener, he's a truth teller, and one of the most consistent advocates I know for folks who've historically been left on the margins, not just in education, but globally in education. He is the founder of AIELOC, the Association of International Educators and Leaders of Color, and the founder of KDSL Global and International Consulting Group that's worked with educators in over 60 countries. Yeah, y'all heard me. 60 countries. He booked. He stayed booked. Kelly Price booked. Look, boo. All right. But before the titles, the organizations, the global reach, Kevin was a Black boy from Flint, Michigan, who knew that calling out injustice and calling in community weren't separate acts. They were both part of liberation. Since 2017, Kevin's work through AIELOC has shaken tables and created new ones where international leaders of color don't just get a seat, they get power. From recruitment reform to mentorship networks, from pushing for pay equity and dismantling performative DEI, Kevin's been building a movement. One heart and mind at a time. He doesn't do fluff. He does not do fake allyship. He does the work, y'all. And he brings all of himself to the mission. Kevin, welcome to Brave Voices in Education. How's your heart, my brother and friend?
Look, that I might have to have you do all the introductions from now on. No, I just appreciate you, the introduction, the time and the space, and just so glad to be in community. The heart is very well. The heart has been at a place of just rest and joy and peace over the last couple of weeks. I recently shifted from Dallas, Texas, back to Washington, D.C. So it's been a great move. It's like being back home.
Okay. Well, we're gonna lean into that a little bit. I'm curious for you, as you've walked with a number of people, your origin story starting in Flint. Could you help us to understand, like, what made you decide you wanted to actually be a global educator? Where did that come from?
Yeah, great question. So the year was 2000. So 25 years ago, I was in grad school at Michigan State University, met a brother, looked like us, and just overheard him say, when this program is over, I'm going back to London. And so, I was like, London, so that was the first sort of like seed that was planted. So I was like, I approached him, introduced myself. I said, I want to learn, more about, you said you're going back to London. He's like, yeah, I'm an international school teacher. So that right there, that statement, that interaction led to me learning about opportunities to teach abroad, a whole new world of space that I knew nothing about, going through undergrad, becoming a teacher and all things. And then we had lunch. Again, he gave me all copious, just the notes. These are the organizations. These are the groups to be aware of. And I took those. And so took them, did nothing with them. Fast forward a couple years later, I have a mentee from Pontiac, Michigan. He was telling me, hey, I'm going to teach in Sudan. I'm like, wait a minute. So he was going to be an international school teacher. He went to a teacher fair in Iowa, same thing. And then again, fast forward like maybe 2 years later, I said, you know what? I think I want to do this. I've been in Fairfax County for some years.
Yeah.
I was feeling, you know how sometimes we get in that mood where it's like, it's time to make donuts. It feels sort of repetitive. I'm not feeling challenged and pushed accordingly.
Yeah.
I was that kid in school. And I ended up applying. I got an offer and I went through think it was, I forgot which group it was. It was a group that was out of like, they were Egypt based and Middle East
Mhm.
based. And I had an offer in Egypt,
Hmm.
Dubai, and Laos.
Wow.
And I said, out of all three of those, which one put out, would I likely not go to? And it was
Mhm.
Lao. I was like, I didn't know a lot about Lao. So the learning, I knew it would be huge. The team was very supportive
Mhm.
in terms of their vision for education, their vision for me.
Mhm.
They were speaking so much into me in terms of they really looked at the work I did and said, hey, there's going to be a leadership position we want to
Mhm.
consider you for. You'll start as a teacher, but we got some recommendations from accreditation. And
Hmm.
so and I became a leader. I was the first. I was international school teacher, grade 5, and became a director of the curriculum at the school. And that was the beginning.
Huh.
Again, it just this newfound, this just overhearing someone else
Mhm.
mentioning something and just taking that risk to
Uh-huh.
sort of reach out and say, I'm curious. I want to learn more about, what I heard you say, in terms of
Yeah.
learning. And that was 25 years.
I would think, I'm gonna bring my mom into this for a moment because when I talked to her about my first trip abroad working was, I've been so many places. So I want to say that it was Japan because I was teaching at the Hale School in Roxbury. And I remember this was a partnership through, at the time it was called Wheelock College. Wheelock was taken over by Boston University. And so there was a partnership between Boston Public Schools and Wheelock, and they had a professor or a set of professors that basically said, hey, we want to bring you to understand, we want to create an opportunity for an exchange of educators from America to educators in these international schools in Japan to talk about teaching, talk about culture, talk about just our different ways of creating connection and meaning with young people. It was like, okay, I've always had an inkling, like I wanted to see the world beyond my zip code. And I was, I think, 4 years in at that juncture, and happened to have some other Black people who also joined on that trip. And I was astounded by what I learned about myself in that environment. I will say that for me, it did take me a little bit longer to really get comfortable with, I don't know the language,
Mhm.
if something happens, where's my help?
Yeah.
Even though I was going with a group of folks, but like, where's my help if something happens? Cause I'm now on the other side of the world. And, my mom was like, well, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you going to that place? Cause my mom has not, like, her travel has been the islands via
Okay.
cruise ship.
Yeah.
Has not been like, okay, we're going to go. And my dad is like, he's grown. He'll figure
Okay.
it out. Right. But for them, their arc of life was like, we go out of the country
Hmm.
for just to the islands. We're gonna go on a cruise ship,
Hmm.
and we always gonna come back. We ain't never gonna be gone too long. And so I know for me, this was actually a glass ceiling breaking in my family dynamic,
Yeah.
because now all of a sudden my brother and sister could also see this
Mhm.
as an opportunity for them to go beyond where they are. And
Yeah.
so I'm just curious for you, how did you get to a place of actually, like, really owning, like, I'm gonna be an international educator? Like, help us understand that psychology, because there
Yeah.
might be some people here who are like really thinking about this now based on where we are and want to really explore that as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think again, going back, even though those interactions were, 2003 with my mentee, and then
Mhm.
myself going over 2005.
Mm.
I think again, the seed planting, the seeing that again, these are folks, I'm like, they look like me. And again, hearing and seeing their journeys and their stories and
Yeah.
knowing just their process, those processes helped as well to say,
Mhm.
here's what, here's an avenue to go through. And so
Mhm.
for me, it was like, now if they could do it,
Yeah.
I could do it, you know. But also, I think in me, it was felt like I was again at that point career wise, where I was like, it's like I'm okay, but I'm like, I need something. I need a challenge. And
Mhm.
for me, I know I wanted a cultural challenge as well. And so it was that whole notion and thinking of, what would it be like to live outside the United States?
Mhm.
Because at that point, I'd only been to Africa. So when I was 19, I won a free trip to Benin via Young Sisters and Brothers magazine. This is back in the day, like back in the day.
Okay.
And I was like college. So I've been overseas before. I had my passport. I've been, it was like a 10-day trip. And so, but again, that going on a vacation and living, That's not the same thing because
Yeah.
living, you're gonna be there full time. Like you
Right.
said,
Right.
it's a different thing. So I think for me, it was knowing that because I went with, and again, I was sharing, and people, looking, they're like, Lao, Virginia, like where are you going? Lao, where? So
Yeah.
it was the education aspect of me telling and sharing
Uh,
as well, but also it was I had the various voices of why are you going there? But like you're saying, go back to mom's. Mom's was like, go, buy, live, dream, do,
okay.
enjoy,
Yeah.
live. And so that message was the one that I leaned most into. And then of course back then my Flint community church alumni, Michigan State, and it was interesting too because then the people who either knew somebody who
Yeah.
was an international teacher, then it became this whole flock of individuals that was, oh, I know such and such. She's in China. Well,
Yeah.
they used to teach in Africa, so that happened as well.
Okay.
So a lot of those connections opened up too. So then it became, oh, okay, there are others. There's this community. I just didn't know
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
So I think between that, like you're saying, that planting early on of those seeds
Uh,
into, taking the action and the steps, and then into like realize that there's this larger community that exists. It was like, you know what, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
I'll figure
Yeah.
out. So it was like again, just closing the eyes and walking into the unknown, taking that faith. And then it also, it made me think about all the other experiences that I had as well. Again, from undergrad to grad school to becoming a, educator, switching, majors, all the things. It was all based on like that whole, eyes closed walk, just knowing that, okay, this is the path right now. And, you know, just you trusting and believing.
Yeah. I know that for me, I recently just did a 3-country tour through North Korea. No, sorry, South Korea, Bangkok, Thailand, and Shanghai, China. Every journey I've been on has shown me that there's incredible kindness and curiosity in people, that folks want to be able to connect and make meaning and understand a little bit more about who we are. I, as a 6'3" Black man, very teddy bear-ish, cornbread fed and all of who I am, have found formidable experiences that dispel a lot of what has been pushed out and purported in our media. In the American media, I'm going to be very specific. And I know that I've been places, I've been to Dubai as well, and I definitely would love to lean in a little bit more about your experiences there. But I know that for me, I've always been safe. I've always felt safe. Again, I wrestle with which part of my identities made me feel more secure or what that may have spoke to the environment, like invisibly, like what were people like really thinking about as they saw me, bopping about the streets and going in and out of shops and sitting at, a coffee shop. One of the most profound moments in my life was actually on my first trip to Japan, where we were in Hiroshima. We had just finished looking at the bombing site in Hiroshima, and we were staying at this little inn that was next to a body of water. And I want to believe that this was the innkeeper's mom, who we saw. She bowed. She was, she was very kind, had a really warm smile. And I woke up early that morning because I'm still in disbelief that I'm in this place,
Yeah.
that I actually have, like, my feet are on this soil, and I am engaged emotionally in their stories of what they've overcome and what they're still overcoming from this very traumatic, very violent event that took place on their lands, but they still embrace me and us with kindness and care and consideration and very generous in spirit, even though our country represents this massive destruction in parts of their space, on parts of their community. And so I go back, I'm standing at the water, tears are flowing. I'm overwhelmed. I am like, God, I cannot imagine. Like, you have made space and time for me to be here. And it's just me in the space. There was this arch that was like facing the water. And I remember standing like right in the center of the arc. And then someone walked up and touched my hand and then grabbed my hand. And I look down, and here's this little 4-foot woman who doesn't speak a lick of English, not a lick. Grabbed my hand, looked at me. I looked down at her. I said, good morning. She just nods because She doesn't speak English, and she just smiles and she just looks at me and she just pulls and tugs in my hand a little bit more. And I was like, all right, for the spirit, the spirit said to me, all right, let's go. And so she walked me back into the inn and we winded up having breakfast. And I found that every place I went to, every school, every student I had a chance to speak with or not speak with, but was in some communication through interpretation and whatnot. Every space I've been in, whether or not it's been in Japan or in China, in Africa, and even in Dubai, where I had some really interesting experiences in Dubai. But I found myself in absolute awe that people who may carry differences will still love on us in ways that are absolutely human and kind. And so for you, Flint, Dallas, Dubai, DC, and a number of places in between. You've walked with people and you've taught across borders. I'm curious for you, how has each place shaped and sharpened how you lean in and live with purpose and passion? And I'm curious what, if any of the places that you've been have really taught you something so profound that is so rooted in who you are today.
I think it's like you said, each of the places, where I've set my feet, had the, opportunity to work and to live. I think the one thing I always said, I remember a mentor asking me, like, how have you been able to, move about in all these different countries and places? And I said, the one thing that I always do before, so if it's I get a encounter, they're like, oh, we want you to come to Venezuela and do work. I worked there for like 3 years. I always try to see, do I know anybody wherever I'm at? So if it's in the States or abroad, that's from that country. Do I have what's my understanding of that country? I try to do my own unpacking of either myths, stereotypes, what I've heard, what I think I know before going. And then thinking about like the history, her history, their history. How can I learn about that and bring that in? Things that I'm curious about. So for me, it's bigger than just going to the international school and, we go and do we could fly in, fly out, do the work and, move on to the next. So I try to make sure I'm always, intentional around my own learning, my own unpacking, when it comes to like the story of countries and cities. And I think that really didn't, to be honest, I don't think that really happened the first time when I went to Laos. I knew I was going to live in Laos. We had Lao language, we had class, we had culture, we dove into that very early on. But I don't think it really happened until I went to like Nigeria. So I have a good friend here, Bumi. We were in grad school at the same time. She's in DC too. And so she, Nigerian American, grew up in Rhode Island. And we were just all with Jonathan before. So when you said Rhode Island, like I've been in Rhode Island.
Yes.
So via Boomy. And so before I went to Nigeria, I was like, I asked her, I said, oh, I'll be going to Nigeria. I'm gonna be there for 3 months consulting. So I'm like, I'm gonna be there. So it's like fully there. Be in Lagos. And so her and I, had a chat. Man, when I say she connected me with so many people, I was booked and busy every weekend. Like meeting artists. I mean, I felt like I was fully immersed, in Nigeria, from books to culture, to poetry readings, open. I mean, you name it. And I took full advantage of it as well. So I feel like that was probably the one country and place where I felt like this is what I want to do when I, go to countries, when I have the opportunity either to consult, to do work, or to live. It's like become fully immersed as much as possible and make sure, again, doing that, like we say, that pre-work before, and that reflective. And so, when people ask, it's interesting, people like, people ask, what's your either favorite place you've worked or lived? And, they get shocked when I mention some place. I'm like, Beirut, Lebanon, Lagos, Nigeria. They get shocked when I mention, they think it's going to be Dubai. I'm like, y'all, it's some places out here that, you might media-wise have one picture in your brain, but until you get there and realize that, the food, the culture, the what's on offer will shock you, so I always, take full, advantage. So it's a lot of that, again, that pre-work, doing that in advance of the journey. And then I think it's like, just, I had those moments. It's funny. I have like a board here with like all things I, tend to buy when I go to these countries. I get a refrigerator magnet. And so like sitting over here on the left of me is like all these around the world. So it's like I'm sitting there, just in my view, vantage point over here in my view. But it's just, like you said, I think And I say going back to that is because I remember going there and seeing the
Mhm.
marketing, the
Yes.
movies. And I said, up here, like literally
Mhm.
popped my head. Because I
Mhm.
said, I look at the advertisements all over the town and city. They all look like me. I said, I'm looking at entrepreneurs that were there, either from
Mhm.
education space, restaurant space, hospitality, different. Again, because like I said, I'm there for 3 months. So I was in
Yeah.
full, like, let's connect, meet. Again, I'm like, they all look like me. Entrepreneurs, like, city full
Yeah.
of, when we were doing the training, your
Mhm.
training was like 5 days a week. I got to go out to the different schools, was with the Ministry of Education. All the scholars at the schools looked like
Mhm.
me. So it was
Yes.
just like, what would have been like, it was, and for some, because the team, was diverse. So for
Yes.
some,
Oh, yeah.
they had their moment. They had their moment. I said, Dr. Jeff and I was on these streets. But when I say felt at home, felt seen, felt valued, and even though, again, I wasn't Nigerian, but again, the folks that Boomi connected me with and picked me up
Yeah.
were open. I mean, like I said, from malls to art to, all kinds of spaces. That has probably been the most memorable and rewarding, and again, shaped how I
Yeah.
want any international experience to be, going
Mhm.
forward.
Yeah. Could you speak a little bit to what Blackness symbolized for
Mhm.
you as you find yourself American
Yeah.
in these spaces, especially in countries where, with African people?
Hmm.
And I would love for you to just shed a little bit of context on what did that feel like? What did that look like? Like, what was the tensions you may or may not have experienced? And I'm also curious about that when, the experiences in the Middle East as well, because you talked about Lebanon, and I was like, okay, okay. So I would just love for you to talk about that, because I know that that is something in my time in Ghana and South Africa, we definitely talked about to a degree, but I'm curious for you to shed a little texture to some of that.
Yeah. I always say, we global. I
Hmm.
don't care where I have been,
Yeah.
and I always tell people before, if they're interested in, moving or going to any country, look
Hmm.
up Blacks in and put
Yeah.
the country, and it's a
Yeah.
group. So I
Okay.
always say we are global. And whether it's Caribbean, African, from the States, British, Navy, I mean, you can name it. We
Yeah.
are in all parts of this earth. And it's interesting you said that. I remember, actually, I think this is probably the Dubai encounter. I was called Yankee American. That was front and center more often
Hmm.
when I opened my mouth.
Okay.
Let me go on it because I'm gonna get into that too. When I opened my mouth, because it was a trying to figure out where
Hmm.
he's
Hmm.
from, because
Yes.
that question would be asked often. Where
Yes.
are you from? And people trying to figure out where you're from. And then the mouth opens, and then I guess that something about the accent comes out, and they're like, "Oh, you from
Hmm.
the States? You from America?"
Yeah.
But it was interesting because I felt like that always superseded my Blackness. Like in
Hmm.
certain countries, they would they would say American. They would say what country you're from. You're American. You're a Yankee. You're this that. You're from the West.
Yeah.
That would always come first, and then it was like
Right.
the black. So it was interesting. I always felt like in the States, I'm Black first. I'm American second. And then
Yeah.
I go overseas, and then
Yeah.
that blue passport, that's like that comes first, and you Black second. It was just like just trying to like
Hmm.
figure those two out.
Yeah.
It was, I think you said, Middle East. Let's go to Middle East.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, I remember being here's an example. I remember being in an elevator because I always said, you never know where folks are from. So if
Yeah.
you never know where they're from, you also don't know what they speak.
Exactly.
So I remember being in an elevator. Um, there were, because I kept it very, model UN with the friends group. So we had Iran, we had Pakistan, we had Lebanon, we had
Yes.
Africa. I made sure, again,
Hmm.
very intense. Australia with the folks that I hung around with. They
Hmm.
were from India, from all over the world, like
Yeah.
literally. So I cannot wait because next year I turn 50 and, the world gonna be in Croatia. We coming, all my people who,
Okay.
come together. But
Okay.
I remember being in an elevator. It's around four of us were together. One spoke, what did he speak? It was French, English, and some Arabic. Somebody got in the elevator.
Hmm.
They started talking French. They didn't know our friend spoke French.
Okay.
They got off the elevator. He was
Yeah.
like, yeah, they were talking about us and talking about me. Yeah, exactly. That whole notion that you can't sit and think you go do that talking about people,
Oh.
you know, you just never knew. And so I think for me, it was being able to suspend that. So
Yeah.
suspending that whole, again, we look and see and trying to, figure out. And to me, it was like, it's more than that. Let me get to know the person in and of themselves, what they're about, what they want to do, where they're at, and, how to truly, again, move away from and even moving back to DC, because this could be a very, what do you do type of city at times, which I said is interesting because I've been here 2 weeks and no one's asked me that.
Okay.
I've not encountered that yet. I've not encountered that. So I'm like,
Strange.
right. But it's interesting because I said, I don't want to be around those people, to be honest. Like, we are solely focused on like occupation type things. I'm not there right now. Like,
Yeah.
right. I'm like,
Status, all of that.
exactly. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could talk about, we could lean into DC. Like I've dated a couple of folks in DC. It's a real interesting space, but I'm gonna
It is.
stay global for a moment. So you founded AIELOC not just as a reaction, but I would say a revolution. I'm curious, like, bring us to that moment where you were like, you have been working in different countries at this point as an educator, as a connector. You are experiencing all of this incredible collaboration and deep learning and relationship making. But at some point, you said, enough. We need a space of our own in the global context. And you said, I'm going to build it. And
Yeah.
so, could you actually bring us to what made you decide, hey, I'm going to create this space, especially for a diverse
Yeah.
group of global leaders who are serving in the international education space?
Yeah. And it really started with thinking about what international education could be,
Mm-hmm.
what it could be, what I felt was missing, wasn't present visually when it came to representation, when it came to leadership, when it came to research. I just felt there was so much missing, and
Oh,
so I would be in these spaces, and especially it's like if I'm the only one. So I'm the
mm-hmm.
only feature presenter, I'm the only consultant, I'm the only one in,
Yeah.
whatever rooms, tables, spaces I was in. And I'm like, again, why aren't there more? Like,
Right.
I'm like, I know great people. Then I'm like, then it became the whole people were applying for leadership positions with beyond like tons of experience,
Yeah.
degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why are they taking teacher positions?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, just again, so it became questions, questions, questions. So, but then like 2007, talk about being brave, because I was in an international school leadership program. My big beef was it was a little antiquated.
Mm.
So I'm like the program it was like, I think I started around 2013, 2012, 2013. And I had one more class. I was like, I'm out. I dropped it. I couldn't. I was like,
Wow.
but in the midst of that, talking with colleagues who I met who are now members of AIELOC, have did stuff with research, just presented at AERA, just got their
Yeah.
PhD. Like,
Nice.
it made sense. I was like, because we were all like, there's an element missing. There's topics we're not talking about. And I remember writing to a well-known international education group, and I'm like, we got to do more. Like,
Yeah.
what's going on around like diversity, equity, inclusion within our space? When we look on some of these websites, when people come to me and say, I was going to apply, but then I looked at the leadership team, like it didn't
Yeah.
look like that was going to be the place for me. You know what I mean? And it still happens.
Oh,
I get
yes.
these messages often. And so I think for AIELOC, I think it all, 8 years ago was when it really sort of bubbled over, if you say.
Mhm.
I had a colleague, I was serving as her sponsor, and I would check in with her. So anytime someone say, can you sponsor, mentor me for, I'm looking at, this leadership position, or I'm looking for this, people reach out. I said, sure. Yeah. I'm like, I knew her, I worked with her. She's just everything. So I'm like, yes, it
Yeah.
makes sense. You're like number 2 at the international school. You would be in line to be ahead. So she was interacting with a certain recruitment company, and the person within there said, the position she thought she wanted to apply, and like, don't apply for that. They want a white British man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, so in 2017, this is how
Yeah.
this system is operating.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And I'm like, if he was very comfortable with that coming out of his mouth,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Right.
So, and it speaks to race, gender, country of, origin.
Mhm.
So I'm just like, so then I just went on this whole, let me ask people, because I was out of recruitment. I've been consulting, been my
Yeah.
own little world over here. I was away from the international school teaching, leadership,
Mhm.
all the things. And so people are like, yeah, Dave, if I have a hijab, if I'm from this country, this
Mhm.
passport, my
Yeah.
accent, it was like all a downpouring of all these different pieces of identity of who we are. And
Mhm.
you're like, you would think that in an international space, like, if we all, let me get 50 of us together and everybody say hello.
Right. Yes.
Are we all gonna say hello the same? It's gonna sound
Right.
exactly the
Right.
same, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and that was the early beginnings of, it literally set up as a Facebook affinity space.
Mm.
Just discussions, starting to do some webinars, some chats, some talking. And I think when we did the I Am Not a Virus campaign, that's when it started to be a little bit more visible. People were
Wow.
like, what? Because we had members who were in China who were impacted
Mm.
because there were like people who were black from all over UK, like America, states that
Mhm.
were being like just mistreated, and it was very
Wow.
public. And so we did this
Mhm.
"I Am Not a Virus" campaign, and that's when people were like, "Wait, who's this
Right.
ALI group?"
Mhm.
And again, we were doing stuff behind the scenes, around like recruitment, sharing within the communities, opportunities that came up,
Yeah.
just mentoring stuff. But then it became, you know what? We need to be a little bit more visible, a little bit more public, And again,
Yeah.
our thing was, because during the pandemic, everybody talked about reimagining.
Mhm.
That word was real popular, right? We can Google and look up reimagine,
Yeah.
AAC,
Yeah.
it's gonna pop. But that was our thing. It's like, again, what if international education could really truly live up to its name? To,
Yeah.
when people say international, when they say global, when I look
Yeah.
at the panelists on a webinar, when I look at who's featured presenters, when I look at leadership and all those things, it should truly reflect internationalism.
I agree.
Everybody shouldn't be loving the same. Everybody shouldn't be living the same. Everybody shouldn't be looking
Mhm.
at all the things. And so for
Right.
us, it was getting very comfortable calling out a system that was very comfortable. Let's just be
Mm.
blunt. Let's just be blunt.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so when it came to advocacy, when it came to learning, when it came to research, what topics hadn't been talked about, there hadn't been an increase into
Mhm.
around Black women in international school leadership. Around me, just a slew of different things. Learning to advocate for yourself when you're in these situations instead of saying, I'm gonna exit this system because these people over here acting up and I don't want to be Flint on them.
Right.
Let me, like, so it's like, I need to know, like, what are some strategies, some tools, and some spaces where I can come in
Mhm.
and commune with others and figure this out, and have these brave conversations versus, you know what, I'm good. And the people, why? Because for us, we're like, this is a retention. Like for us,
Yeah.
it's like retention. Because if I feel like I am alone, I'm the only one in this space.
Yeah.
It's like, no, if there's an entire community that has your back and is cheering and rooting for you,
Yeah.
into like the learning, again,
Mhm.
learning from folks who look like us and making sure that we model what all these other conferences and webinars and workshops and things should look like. It should be no
Mhm.
question. So it should never be oh, we couldn't find anybody that, that would come up too. I didn't know anybody. You didn't?
Mm.
Really? Or you didn't attempt to know. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Well,
make it
well,
make sense. So that was our big thing, is uncovering, unearthing, and making more visible and public all of these brilliant people with all these
mhm.
gifts,
Yep.
and not leaning into the old way of, this old boys network of who gets access to leadership, who gets access to all of these opportunities. When it's
Mhm.
like, everybody should have access. Why not? If I'm
Yeah.
fully trained and ready to go, and so we started Spinal Leaders of Color program because people were like, oh, we don't know. We can't find. Really? Okay. So we in cohort 5. Who can't you
Mhm.
find?
Right.
We got new leaders of color now. So it's, again, for us, it's instead of being accepting things, because that would happen. It was like people would say stuff and it was like, okay, no, but we like, we don't have what?
Mhm.
Oh, we can create it. Or,
Yeah.
oh, y'all are being discriminatory and racist with y'all recruitment practices. Oh, okay, we can
Mhm.
start our own recruitment.
Yeah.
Next. You know what I mean? So it's just like, no, we don't, no one has to settle. We don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. One of the clients I am working with, I'm going to say am right now, he indicated that ALOC has been a prominent voice right now in regards to the whole recruitment process. And I think that you all have kind of created a list of folks who you're like, well, we won't
Mm-hmm.
be
Yep.
supporting, we will not be promoting. We are actually, we are distancing ourselves from these organizations. And so in this time, could you give a little bit of context to
Mm-hmm.
how you all are situating yourself in disruption?
Yes.
Because you have some major firms, many of the recruitment firms are generally led by, white
Yep.
men. And you all are creating quite the stink because this leader
Mm-hmm.
is a white man and he's like, I really have to sit and process what do we do, because we've had this relationship with this organization and now we're rethinking whether or not we should continue, because our values that we live and embody in our institution is not necessarily like, we then have to call the question all that we say that we are.
Exactly.
Based on the fact that now we are at this crisis of consciousness. So I'm curious, give some folks some color about this is a power move y'all got going on.
Yeah, and it's in the same light as Target. And I'm gonna be
Yes.
honest, it's the
Okay.
same because I haven't been to Target this year. So it's
Yes,
in
me
that
either.
same spirit that if I'm not gonna engage or I'm not gonna go into places where I'm gonna be devalued. And
Mhm.
I'm definitely not gonna spend my money, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the stance that, we took. And it's like once again, it's a group that I didn't name back in 2017.
Mhm.
And now we fast forward 8 years later, I'm mentoring somebody else and
Mhm.
she's had a similar encounter. So I'm just
Wow.
like, we can't sit here and throw up these words and terms and say
Mhm.
diversity, equity, inclusion, we're about this. And then the experiences of 3 Black women have been consistent. And so, I tell people, I say it's very personal, number one,
Yeah.
because if you come to me and you're like, this was my experience, then and then it's not just that. I'm like, I have all this other evidence of people like,
Mhm.
here's the email that was sent about my passport. Here's what was shared, recordings. I'm like, yeah, this again, I felt like, going back to like you said earlier, I'm like, I can only be so kindness and justice not the same. So at some
Right.
point, and I think for us, we've listened multiple times whenever we've had open spaces for recruitment.
Yes.
We do that because we started AIELOC, and I do that because AIELOC started because of a recruitment issue. So there are times when we'll say, okay, let's come together, open space. How's recruitment going? What's your experiences like? And when it's consistently the same names coming up, that's a red flag. We call it a red flag.
Mhm.
And so for us, in our quote unquote ban that we put forth, we do, like I say, my hat said, rooted in love.
Okay.
I want you to do better. I want you to be better. I want you to change. So our leadership team took it upon ourselves, for us, it was a love letter. Like,
Yeah.
this is our love letter to y'all. Because we
Mhm.
didn't just say we banning y'all. We also
Mhm.
left y'all with some crumbs.
Okay.
Here's some things you can do to improve.
Yes.
And so when people are like, we want to talk about, we like, y'all just go read the letter. The love letter was set out. We just put the letter out there, you
Mhm.
know? And
Yeah.
so, and once that change occurs, maybe we'll lift it. But until that
Yes.
occurs,
Yeah.
we're standing where we are. We said what we
Mhm.
said. We
Mhm.
definitely need to see change, and we're going to make sure we inform members
Mhm.
and schools. So again,
Yes.
we've shared with our schools, like, be aware.
Mhm.
So if you come and saying certain groups around us, we gonna all look at you like,
Mhm.
because it's not happening. Like they have work to do. They need to do their work. And then when they're ready, but yeah, we don't see it as a quick fix. It is
Yeah.
something that has been historically in place.
Mhm.
And and it's again being brave, taking those chances, no stances, knowing it's not going to be easy. Like I tell people, we don't sell ice cream. It's summer. It's hot DC right now, and guess
It's
what?
not peace and love. It's
I'm
not Ben and
right,
Jerry's for you.
right. I'm like, if I do it, and I rather remind people, we do this good. I want you to. I want to see you change. I want to see you win. Literally, I
Mhm.
want to see you win. I want
Yeah.
everybody to win. I'll sleep very well. I get rest very well at night.
Okay.
Knowing that what we are doing and the vision that we have is all in love. Bottom line.
Mhm.
If I didn't care, I'd be going about my business. But I think we know what's possible. The entire ecosystem needs to just do that. The work we're doing with the task force is another indicator. Recruitment was
Mhm.
on there as well.
Yeah.
Accreditation, leadership, curriculum. We've named big things big things that we all know need to change.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. So for
Yeah.
people to act like, oh, what, who,
Mhm.
And so my thing is, until I see on every single international school leader write up a position and
Mhm.
teacher that if we expect all of y'all to be culturally competent,
Yeah.
and I don't see that right now until I
Mhm.
go on any international school website, click on leadership team,
Mhm.
and see it reflecting the
Mhm.
global, environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
'Cause
gonna
we're the
continue to do
global
what we're gonna do.
majority.
Like,
We're the global majority.
right.
Like, what's going on?
Exactly. So
Right.
it's worth to be that same thing with recruitment with all these when I can every time I click on a webinar, feature speaker, all the things.
For those who are listening to this conversation, whether or not you identify as Black or not, you might be from Flint, you might be in DC, you could be in Dubai, you could be in any part of the globe. And they're trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the one thing I can do to be a little bit more brave? Or what is the thing that maybe I should consider and hold that would make me, a better person who's rooted in love, as you
Yeah.
name? What would you offer to them at this point in our time?
Yeah. I always say, one of my favorite quotes, the time is always right to do what's right. So I always say,
Yes.
whenever you feel like that nervousness, that sweat, that shake, because I felt it when, I first had to call in, because I did the
Mhm.
call in first. Well, I did the call out. Call
Yeah.
in. We really went through a period of, we're gonna do call in, because we know some people don't, we're gonna call in and see if that's,
Yeah.
and then if you don't do something, then we're gonna call you out. But I
Yeah.
went through that season of call ins. So when I first called in this international education group, I was
Mhm.
like, I'm in this program. Again, you
Mhm.
go through all your brain of, I'm in this program. I want to be an international school leader. Oh, what are they gonna think? And
Uh-huh.
again, it wasn't until I took all of that out. I wrote it
Mhm.
down. It was like, but then when's the change gonna happen? Like, it's gonna be some more me's and other people coming, and there are people who are already here, who are accepting this. So I always say the time is always right to do what's right, and if
Yeah.
someone feels like I am alone in this
Mhm.
thinking or this calling out, you're not. There's
Yeah.
others. There's an entire
Mhm.
community, and so it's really just taking that step and that chance, and not even worried. Like, again, when we did that, even when we did the band, it was like, oh my, it's like, oh, like I don't, we don't try. Like I try, I'm like, and then I was like, oh no. I was like, I'm like, not my mentee. I'm like, come
Mhm.
on,
Right.
because again, I was rooting for y'all. Like I said, I'm rooting for
Mhm.
all, like, I'm
Yeah.
rooting again, rooted in love and in change. Like,
Mm.
otherwise, like, don't write it and don't say it if you're not gonna do it. Because
Yeah.
again, part of this is that whole accountability aspect. And we
Mhm.
all know how that goes with some people in groups at times.
Look.
Like we had somebody recently who said, we have an African conference coming up. And I loved that Kwame said, because someone said she's from Morocco. She said, "Ooh, that flag, that's, that map that's on there. It's some
Yeah.
history. I need to let y'all know."
Yeah.
And the beauty of it, and I linked Kwame with her. They had,
Yeah.
we're in community conversation. He put our entire thing, and I'm like, that's all we need. That's all I need. I have now learned. I did not know. And I'm like, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm like, we all human. Bottom line. We
Yes.
gonna mess up. I'm not walking
Right.
in perfection,
Look.
Right. And so when I mess up, if I misgender, if I wasn't that, I'm like, wait, hold on. Let me
Mhm.
let me take a step back.
Yeah.
So again, it's in love and it's in learning. Yeah.
Mm. That's a word.
Yeah.
That is a word. Okay. Well, before we let you go, we want to engage in a quick game that I call Brave or Nah. It's just to see, how bold you might be in some of your choices. Some of these things are absolutely ridiculous and some of these are absolutely real. And so we just curious about, the Kevin outside of this incredible global leader that you are. And so I want to center in on DC specifically. And so I'm just curious, Dallas barbecue versus DC mumbo sauce wings. Which one could you have for the rest of your life? Yep.
But I'm not gonna lie, I've had the mumbo sauce, but I would definitely say Dallas barbecue, but I'm definitely gonna be picking the place where I'm having from because all barbecue is not the same.
Facts.
Just saying.
Facts.
I'm just saying.
Okay, okay. I'm curious if you could ship in anything that you could have monthly, would you want to have some crabs from Maryland? Or would you want to have some crabs or shellfish from Thailand?
Dang. You like,
Mm,
going good. Well, I just had crab this past week.
hmm.
Oh, now you talking about shipping in though.
Yeah.
But be more, I'm like, let's go. But some right now, some of the be more might have some shipped in. I'm like, I'm not gonna play it.
Hmm.
It'll probably be more. Every time I go to Baltimore, I have some good seafood, some good
Okay.
crabs, some all things.
Okay.
Yeah,
I I I was curious.
yeah,
I was introduced to soy sauce crabs
uh,
in Thailand, and I
yeah.
was like, are they supposed to be cooked first? They just laid them there. It was like, and they had like a dozen. I was like,
Now, wait a minute.
y'all ain't put like y'all ain't put no seasoning on this. Like,
See,
let's go. I was like, Okay. You learned a lot.
Exactly.
My stomach did as well. Okay. um, if you were to, in this season, next year, you were invited to participate in the Amazing Race or Survivor, which one
Amazing
would
Race.
you
Number one, Amazing Race. Let's go.
say more?
I want to go all, we better be going around the world. It better be like checking it everywhere. And I say that because a lot of the places where I've landed, either
Mhm.
short term or long term, consulting and working wise, it's felt there's been an aspect of that, of, like figure it out, the grocery store, haircut, all the things,
Yeah.
my doctor, like all the things. So there is
Yep.
that element of like, go, and then again, find others to be in community with, not
Hmm.
necessarily for a competition, but just for in
Yeah.
terms of community with. Yeah. To lean on. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Kevin, for those who want to stay connected to you, learn more about your journey, bring your work, your leadership, your genius to their organization, how would they go about connecting with you?
Yes. So I am on LinkedIn, Kevin Simpson. The international consulting company is KDSL Global on LinkedIn as
Mhm.
well. AIELOC, we're on LinkedIn as well. Association of International Educators and Leaders of Color. And I'll give our website, which is www.
Hey, awesome. Well, thank you, my brother and friend, for being part of this Brave Voices family. I appreciate you so deeply.
Thank you. Thank you for this space. Appreciate you too as well.
Yeah. So, all right, family. If you are interested in escaping America, you might want to reach out to Kevin.
No.
But nonetheless, this is a wrap for this episode of Brave Voices with Education. If something stirred in you today, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with people in your village, your team, your brave ones. Come be a part of the movement at bravevoicespod.com, where healing meets hustle and testimony turns into transformation. This podcast is more than a show. It's actually the fuel for the Black Boy Joy Summit, a celebration of brilliance, belonging, and Black boyhood that refuses to shrink. Like what you heard? Please like, subscribe, follow us on your favorite platform, leave a review, share it with your circle, because every listen, every share, every shout out helps us build classrooms, communities, and futures that are braver and more beautiful than before. Until next time, generate your own joy. Never go it alone. Get free and always love your brave. Y'all take care.
Man, that was good.